Okay, this is for assignment 4.3, subnetting mastery. So in this homework assignment, we had to go over the 3 videos and talk about it. So here we are. So what is subnetting? Well, subnetting is taking one network and dividing it into multiple subnetworks. So for example, if 10.0.0.x, this would essentially run through 10.001.0.0.1 through 10.0.0.255, right? So basically, and it also, we have to go with the numbers. So basically /24/25/26, etc. Well, what does that mean? Basically, in your subnet, you have 0 through 255. Okay, so if you are on a /24 subnet, then you would use all of these. Okay, now if you are on a where's my eraser? Here it is. If you are on a /25 subnet, it splits it in two. So from 0 to 127, and then to 128 to 255. So very neat stuff there. Sorry, I have to undo like everything. But yeah, that's just how it is. So essentially, the more it goes up, the more it divides. So if you have 2 /25s, that'll equal 1 /24, if that makes sense. Okay, and you can also mix match these. So for example, let's say I had a /25 right here. I could also have 2 /27s and a /26 going in here, because 2 27s equal 126, and then 2 /26 equals 2 /25s, and altogether it equals a /24. Hopefully that's making sense. The guy kind of explained it better than I did. Yeah. So a big thing to know is that there's 7 attributes to subnetting. So let's go over those. Let's see, can I zoom in on this? Yes, I can. Okay, so let's go over it. So the first one is network ID, which is the first possible address in each subnet. So for example, in /25, it'd be 10.0.0.0, and then /27, it would be 10.0.0.128. So let's just show that right here. So for /25, that is right here. It's actually the same example we just showed. 26, 27, and /27. So our first one possibly here would be 10.0.0.0, a lot of zeros. And for 27, the first one here would be 10.0.0.128. The broadcast IP here is the last possible address for each subnet. So for 25, it would be basically the one right before 28. So it'd be 10.0.0.127 right here before it reaches /27. And then for this one, it would be 10.0.0.159. I'll clear this up a little bit. Sorry, I have to Control Z a bunch, but I think the whiteboard's kind of helping a little bit. Okay. So what is the first host IP? Well, the first host IP is the IP address after the network ID. So for /25, how it was 10.0.0.0, it'd be 10.0.0.1. For /27, it was 10.0.0.128, and then this one was the first host for that one would be 10.0.0.129. Okay. Last host IP is the IP address right before the broadcast IP. So how we went over the broadcast IP was the last possible one. For /25 would be 10.0.0.126, and for /27 it would be 10.0.0. Sorry, I'm losing my track on where I'm at. Dot 158. Yep, that's right. Network. The next network is basically the IP address after the broadcast IP. So if it's /25 and the next one's /27, then and /27's network ID is 10.0.0.128, then that would be the next network for 1025. Basically what that's saying. So how this one was 128 and this one was 0. Basically, since it's divided into different subnet, the next one would just be this one for 125. IP addresses, or the number of IP addresses. This is just clarifying the number of IP addresses in a network. So for /25, it's 128 IPs. For /27, it would just be 32, and then obviously this one would also be 32, and then this one would be 64, because 32 plus 32 plus 64 is 128, and that equals 256 IPs for /24. And the last one here is CIDR/subnet. So this identifies the size of a particular subnet. So for example, /25 would be 255.255.255.128, and /27 would be 255.255.255.224. And we'll go over this, how to find the 128 and the 224 in the sheet. But yeah, so since the network IDs and broadcast IPs are so important, users trying to gain an IP cannot use either of those. So even though /25 has 128 IP addresses, only 126 are usable, and that goes for all the other ones. So /27 only has 30 usable IPs, and so on and so on. That's how it's going to be for all of them. They're both used to identify a specific subnet. So /27's network ID is 10.0.0.128. We would say 10.0.0.128/27, if that makes sense. And the IP is never enough. It's always got to have these slashes and then whatever the number is. Never forget them. And then broadcast IPs are used to signal out to anyone in that subnet. So if you're on /25, you can send a signal out from 10.0.0.127. Sorry, I'm getting lost on my zeros and points here. Anywho, let's go over to the cheat sheet guide. Let's erase all this. Go back to our brush. So this is the guide I have. So basically, you start with 1, and then you double it till you reach 128. So in this case, it'll be 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, and then 128. After that, you have to subtract the top row from 255. So 255 minus 1 equals oh wait, is it 256? Yeah, 256, not 255. Apologize. Which equals 255. So this would be 254, 252. It's gonna look messy. I apologize. 248, 240, 224, 192. I'm just giving it up, and then 128. Yeah. And then for your CIDR from /32, you just move from right to left. So it's just like the top one. The middle part's probably just the hardest, but it's just basic subtraction. So Yeah. Okay, I kind of made a chart to kind of furthermore explain what was going on in here, because it was kind of hard to put it all in the notes. So basically, this is showing how to use the actual cheat sheet that you get. So in this case, our example is 10.1.1.55/28. Well, because of the /28, we know our CIDR in the cheat sheet. So we go over here, boom. We already know that our subnet mask is 240 and our group size is 16. So how do we find the rest of this stuff? Well, we start with 0, and then we go to by intervals of the group size. So in this case, it's 16. So 16, 32, 48, 64. And these are basically where these would go. Okay? So since we pass 50.55, we can stop. So what do we do from there? Well, we know that this 48 would be our network ID, 10.1.1.48. And our next network would be 10.1.1.64. With that, the rest is pretty easy. Our broadcast IP, which is, like we went over earlier, the very last one, would be .63. Our first and last host would be .49 and .62. And because it's in /28, we already know that the group size would be 16. Alright, so now we're going to do this problem. So, one moment, sorry. So, with this, it's a little different since it's /24. So we already know that the group size is going to be 256 because, well, /24 covers quite literally everything. So we don't really have to count over here. So we already know that our network ID would be 67.117.36.0. Okay. And that the next one would be 67.117.37.0. Because it uses all 256 IPs, it's going to automatically go over to the next octet and change it. That's okay. It was just a little different. But yeah. So the broadcast IP is the last one before the next one. So in this case, it'd be 67.117.36.255. Okay. And for our last host, those are the only two usable ones. So it'd be 67.117.36, and then 0.1/254, because that's our first one is 1 and our last one's 254. Yeah, pretty confusing stuff to kind of go over at first, but I think the more I do it, the easier it's gonna get. It was a very fun lesson, and yeah, kind of cool to learn how all this works, because it really is a lot.